catching it and not meeting your hand to the ball, but just letting it fall and making the arc relatively consistent about here, I think, so that when we get to using more, we'll stay at a relatively even height. Oof.
This is me. I suck. Or at least I used to. Have you ever wanted to learn something and kept pushing it off? When will you have the time to practice? Has your mom ever sent you that video of a child prodigy and you watched it wishing you had the talent to do a cool skill like that 8-year-old on America's Got Talent? It's commonly thrown around that in order to master a skill, you need to invest 10,000 hours into practice. As someone who's interested in learning a million different things, I simply don't have the time to put 10,000 hours into anything. In his TEDxTalk and his book, The First 20 Hours, How to Learn Anything Fast, Josh Kaufman explores the process of learning, reframing what it means to acquire a skill. He argues that it's unproductive to look at the 10,000 hour rule as a guideline for learning. Instead of assuming you have to put that much time into becoming a world expert at something, what would happen if you can invest just 20 hours into becoming okay, or even simply good at a skill? So, in need of a topic for my honors thesis, I decided to put his methods to the test. Could I become good at a skill in just 20 hours of practice? Furthermore, what does good mean for a beginner learning a new skill? In order to explore this process, I decided to compare the journeys of learning 2 new skills, juggling and playing the ocarina. Kaufman describes a system of practicing called rapid skill acquisition that covers the process in a few basic steps. Number 1, divide the skill into as many possible sub-skills or smaller tasks as possible. 2, learn enough about each sub-skill to be able to practice intelligently and self-correct during practice. 3, remove any physical, mental, or emotional barriers that get in the way of practice. And number 4, practice for at least 20 hours. For juggling, each sub-skill is fairly obvious, going from 1 ball to 2 to 3, and then finally adding tricks. When it comes to learning a musical instrument, the division of sub-skills is a little trickier. I found that while I was working through a workbook of exercises, I was practicing multiple skills at the same time. I was improving my knowledge of the notes and finger positions, producing a clearer tone, and reading sheet music every time I practiced. This meant that my progress with each sub-skill was initially slower, although they all progressed together. The original plan was to practice for 1 hour a day, 4 days a week. Unfortunately, this was difficult to manage as a busy college student. In addition, I found myself consistently getting burnt out, leading to poorer practice.
Ooh!
I needed to change my plan. Thankfully, in addition to practicing individually, I had some help from some really fantastic instructors. So, I decided to bring up this problem in my next ocarina lesson.
Where you do the learning, relearning, and then forgetting, and then come back and kind of learn it again, then where you do that, separated is actually better than just like hammering yourself and saying, I'm gonna practice this thing for an hour.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work effectively.
It's also like way easier to motivate yourself to practice for like 15 minutes than to be like, oh, I gotta take an hour to do this. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I would just try that.
With my revised plan of practicing for only 15 minutes at a time, I found I was not only practicing more often, but I was more motivated to get to practice every single time. So, all that's left to do was keep going.
Cool. Not bad.
So, what did I learn? Well, first, Kaufman discusses the power law of human performance, or of practice. A 2010 study from Southern University says that this law states that the time, t, it takes an individual to perform a given simple task decreases as the number of times, n, the individual practiced the task increases. In simpler terms, practice makes perfect. Kaufman discusses how inverting this graph reflects the learning curve, or how much you improve over the course of learning a skill. At first, since you have no ability in the skill, any improvement is considered lots of growth. Once you've achieved a certain amount of ability, the improvements are on more specific, niche aspects, and therefore aren't as drastically apparent. I'd say that after 20 hours in each skill, I was able to achieve somewhere around this sweet spot on the chart. At this point, I'm no longer actively thinking about each step or sub-skill required to actually perform the skill. I'd consider this point the no longer a complete beginner threshold. So, did I learn? Well, let's find out. While I'm by no means perfect at either skill, I'm extremely proud of how much progress I've made. I'm sure you've heard and seen some mistakes, but it's important to remember that I never set out to be an expert. When you break it down, 20 hours towards a new skill is a very attainable goal, and I can't recommend this journey enough for anyone interested in trying something new. The hardest thing is to just start.
So I guess the only question left is, what can you learn?
Alright, that was a little cheesy, but in all seriousness, I'd really like to take a moment to thank 3 phenomenal advisors. First off, Gabriel Grotto, who helped with the entire juggling journey. Julie Donato, who didn't even know how to play the ocarina, but was still able to help teach anyways. And of course, my advisor for this project, Dr. Kevin Gogler, for being with me every step of the way. Thank you guys so much for all your help. Last but not least, there's nothing left to do but to cite my work. So, here's that. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that this inspires you to learn something new. Remember, all it takes is 15 minutes a day, and soon you'll be hitting those 20 hours yourself. Have fun.